everybody. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Therapy with John and Todd and some other guy that joined us. Anthony Broome, a Michigan guy who we're looking forward to abusing with great affair, great, it's zest. That's what we're going to do. Welcome, Anthony. How you doing?
I'm ready for all of the quote unquote abuse. It's been an up and down few weeks in these neck of the woods. So
I
ready for whatever.
suppose. Okay, before we get to that, a real quick housekeeping bit. I did a polar plunge Saturday. It went fast. I raised more money than anybody else in my group, and I was number one, and I like that. So thank you for your support. It was a much easier jump than the previous year, where it was 4 degrees, real temperature with the wind blowing, and we had to walk like 80 yards back to the dry tent. And this one went really quick. While we were changing, some guy made the joke that the water was 60 or 70 degrees, and we all laughed, but it stuck in my brain that the water was going to be warm when I hit it, and the water was not warm when I hit it, and therefore it was very shocking to jump into a frozen lake again. Okay, Michigan. First of all, let me start by saying congratulations on your first national title since 1948.
Well, in the least optimistic of outlooks, it's at least since a half title. So we'll let that debate rage on. But yeah, what a crazy year it was. I was actually fortunate enough to be in Lincoln for about 36 hours when Michigan was there and had a great time. So a lot of memories from this year. I feel like I was living out a 30 for 30 in real time, but yeah, just it's been interesting.
Well, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you guys.
I know where to start. I got a question.
Oh God!
Hey, listen, you're gonna shut me down here in a little bit anyway. So, I want to, Anthony. What's the general sentiment among Michigan fans with Coach Harbaugh moving on to the NFL?
Yeah, I think given if this was 2 years ago when he got on that plane and interviewed for the Minnesota Vikings and really did so with the intent of taking the job, I think the mood would be very different because it was like, okay, well, they finally beat Ohio State. They finally won a Big Ten title, and now he's gone, and it just would feel quick and abrupt. The fact that it did go 2 years past that, the fact that they did make 3 straight trips to the college football playoff and then finally paid it off this year, I think the majority of the fans are at peace with it. Now, again, I work for a site that has a message board. It's a little more fanatical and a little more polarizing and 50-50 on there with, people saying, don't let the door hit you in the rear end on the way out. And other people, just crushed and destroyed because there hasn't been a national champion that's replaced a head coach, since, Nebraska in 1997 with Tom Osborne. So it's a really unique one-of-one situation. Jim Harbaugh being the polarizing guy that he is. I mean, it's almost like a Rorschach test, really. Like the people are going to see and react to all of it the way that they, it's completely unique to their experience. So I think the majority of Michigan fans are at peace with it, given that they did pay it off this year. But, even when you go with the continuity hire, as they did with Sherrone Moore, it's a little turbulent right now because it's still a transition and there's a lot of change. And I think people are kind of taking that as a slight from Harbaugh that he's, left the cupboard empty or things like that. I don't know that I believe that, but a wide swath of opinions, but I think most people are just ready for the roller coaster to kind of subside. But that comes with questions about the future too.
Okay, I got another question. So my other question, define Michigan man.
Oh my God.
Whew. Well, I'm not.
Yeah.
I am not one myself. So I think Michigan man would probably even take issue with me attempting to define and put that into a box. But yeah, I've been on this. This will be year 10 on this beat for me. And I'm not entirely sure what that means because their most famous Michigan man was an Ohio State guy. Bo Schembechler was on Woody Hayes' staff. So
right.
It's like twist it however you want to,
Ron Moore, is he really the hire that you think they should have hired, or is he the hire because everybody watched what happened at Alabama, where Nick Saban left, and then like every good player they had entered the portal in about 15 minutes after Kalen DeBoer was hired? What do you think of Sherrone Moore? Basically.
Yeah, to me, I think, and I think Kalen DeBoer is the key name here. Like if Kalen DeBoer had still been available, this is just my take on it. I think that would have been, he was a guy that obviously had some ties to the Midwest. I think that would have been like probably the candidate for me. But given that, he wasn't available, Sherrone Moore, I think is qualified for the job. It's not just hey, we had him coach for a couple games in the regular season and he showed he can do it. He could win those games, and this is best for continuity. And, I think it can still be that for them. I think that he passed the audition for them in that regard. But this is a guy who I think Northwestern had interest in him. Jim Harbaugh said there were a couple NFL teams that had called about him as an offensive line coach. He has been Harbaugh's right-hand man in terms of the on-field stuff over the last few years. And, really has shaped an offense that, while it didn't put up the gaudiest of numbers, was efficient and balanced and did a lot of things well. So I think he is, if they were going to go internal, I think he's the best possible candidate for the job. And I think if you just take away the fact that he was on Michigan staff already, if you just look at any Power 5 school that did the type of things that Michigan did over the last few years, having him have that pedigree as an offensive coordinator for a 3-time Big Ten champion, a 3-time, team that made the college football playoff, a national champion. I think that I think it does fit, and I think it works, and I do think that he's going to do a good job. But again, it's you have to do a lot to improve on the margins in other areas, because Jim Harbaugh did have, as wacky as he is and as unique as he is, there are just things that he has an eye for that other coaches don't, and they haven't, and has a Midas touch in that regard. So I think Moore is the best hire they could have made, especially given the fact that it was late January. Super unique, one-of-one scenario. So I think something that will help too is I know when Jim Harbaugh moves on, that transfer portal window opens, but now we're 3-4 weeks into the semester. Add drop dates at a lot of schools are passed, especially at Michigan. So it does, and again, it's not like you're holding players hostage, but it does give them some time to let this calm down. You get to spring ball, and then maybe there's some activity there. But in terms of turning the temperature down a little bit from losing Jim Harbaugh, I do think this is the best move that they could make. But you got to be able, it can't just be a hire that's the best for next year. It's got to be the best hire for 2028 and 2030. Yeah. And it's got to check all those boxes. And I think that they feel that it does.
Well, M. Gabowski is he's a Michigan fellow that joins us often. And he says we're at peace with it because Sherrone Moore is awesome. And we can tell recruits the coach is going to be here next year. And in this day and age, the recruit part of this and what you mentioned about Alabama and being in school, that all makes sense. And Sherrone Moore had some success. Now, I'm going to pop another one up here from another one of our regulars, Fred Sacco. When he says serious question, that's an important qualifier coming from Fred.
It is.
But Fred says, is the Michigan fan base happy with the new hire, or were they hoping for a big splash replacement? Now, you've indicated you thought it was the right move. M. Gabowski says that he's happy, but is there an aspect of the fan base that would – have you heard anything like that?
This is – again, there have been a few coaching searches now. I think this is the fourth one that I've kind of really been locked in on. Rich Rodriguez there were a lot of factions with that. This faction wants this guy. Oh, Lloyd Carr wants this guy. And, there was some fractures there. Brady Hoke, again, that was the first time they kind of made the run at Jim Harbaugh. And you had the people who wanted Harbaugh. And then you had David Brandon's guy, and you had all those. And obviously Harbaugh was as close to unanimous a hire as you could possibly have. And it's this is much different. I'm not comparing them in terms of being a caliber of candidate, but I think this is about as universal an approval rating as a guy could have getting this job in this situation. I think that everyone, obviously athletic department, board of regents were on board, the fan base is on board, community is on board. And the key is, when you look at, they were ready to make Jim Harbaugh the highest paid coach in college football. The key is, okay, well, now we know there's money there's money in the banana stand, so to speak, right? Like Sherrone Moore is going to make half of what Jim Harbaugh was in year one, but you got to, reinvest that into your recruiting department and, all those resources, his staff. You need the collectives to kind of step up and deliver on the NIL front. So it's universally praised, but I think a lot of people know that if this is, and this would have been the way no matter who got hired, because it's not Jim Harbaugh, it has to look different operationally. And I think that the way that he'll need to be supported is different. I think that would have been the case for any head coach. But in terms of the hire itself, I mean, I think a lot of people, this isn't like obviously not a nepotism hire or anything like that. It's
Right.
not well, he was the guy that's been here the longest, let's just hand him the job. A lot of people felt that whether it was, as of this time last week, Jim Harbaugh was still the coach at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh was going to be the coach, could be the coach for 5 more days. He'd be the coach for 5 more years. And I think that Sherrone Moore could have been the coach, obviously did become the coach 5 days later, but he could have been the head coach 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. And I think he's been groomed for that. And I think a lot of people are happy that it wound up being him. And they got it done relatively quickly too, which was a bit of a miracle given that there's a state law in Michigan that the job has to be posted for 7 days. And somehow they were able to get around that. So for that,
Go figure, Michigan getting around it, huh?
Well,
okay.
Here's the thing with that is that I think you're able to get some kind of waiver if you can argue that, waiting does irreparable damage to your business. And, when you're in an era now where if you don't have your ducks in a row, your roster gets poached.
Right.
To me, I think you can make that argument that would do irreparable harm to your business. So,
okay.
I don't know. Anyway,
Jim Harbaugh has gone to the NFL and he's taken some of his staff with him from Michigan, including his strength and conditioning coach that everybody loves. But he's also hired one guy, Connor Stallions, back as a scouting or analyst. We might as well go into this. I mean, this has been this entire season, started out dumb with the whole Northwestern thing going on. But the evolving of Jim Harbaugh started out the season suspended because of the hamburger issue or lying to somebody. And then he got suspended later because you built a big spy network. And then Ohio State was involved in it and they set it all up. Listen, after a while, I couldn't follow what was real and what wasn't. But I can tell you this, standing back and watching the Ohio State and Michigan people go back and forth on Twitter was probably the most fantastic fun of college football I've ever seen in my life. What do you think really happened in all of this? And I guess the real question is, what do you think the outcome is going to be? And there's a whole can of worms that goes along with this.
Yeah. A lot of rumor, a lot of innuendo in terms of where this scandal began, who did what, who told on who. I saw PSYOP stuff. I saw, heard all kinds of things, which, it's college football. This isn't like international espionage, but it turned out to be espionage. Again, I can never sit up here with a straight face and say that Michigan got caught with its hand in the cookie jar. And to me, pointing the finger at, oh, this is what Ohio State does, or this is what we've heard Alabama, et cetera. To me, pointing the finger at someone else isn't an acceptable defense, or it's not a defense that's going to exonerate you. Right. At the same time, it's tough to, and again, this is just, I've had a lot of time to think about this. To me, I think ultimately it was a lot of bluster over stuff that is ultimately probably of the level 2, level 3 violation variety. I don't know. There's just so much still that's unknown in terms of what happened and who knew what and who was responsible. I assume, like, my gut feel on all this is that with Harbaugh gone, a lot of it is just kind of dissipate, because I mean, I don't know how you guys saw it from the outside, but Jim says a lot of things and opens his mouth on a lot of issues, and it does seem like they kind of had it out for this guy. But at the same time, when you look at what Michigan faces from here, I think there would be, obviously, I think, Connor Stallions is done in college football. He'll get a show cause. We'll see on Jim Harbaugh. I think that you're probably looking at him getting a couple more games suspension if he had stayed in college, maybe with the time served, from the Big Ten suspension. But I really do think when the further we get away from this, because it is still going to take a couple of years because it's the NCAA, I think you're probably looking at a pretty substantial fine and maybe some probation, maybe a couple the weekends taken away. I just don't know that it's going to be, they're going to vacate the titles and all these wins are going to go away. The precedent is already
there's not going to be an asterisk on this one.
I mean,
or is there? Like 1997 where there's an asterisk.
Yeah, for both schools, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a Michigan fan, this is a season and an era, this 3-year stretch that will always be tainted. So in that regard, like their biggest punishment is the lack of the moral high ground, right? But other than that, and to them, that might be the worst punishment of all to a lot of people in Ann Arbor. But
I'll be honest with you. Since I was a kid growing, and I'm old, man. Look at me. I'm old and crusty. Since I watched it as a little kid, those winged helmets, when we had grainy TV and we had 3 channels, I've heard of Michigan man. And to me, it was, we always have the highest integrity. And that's really what it went away from me this year, is the constant deflection, the constant pointing. The PSYOPs thing. Yeah. That stuff really did bother me a lot. It wasn't so much that, okay, here's what I understand happened. Is basically it's against the rules to go out and do like in-person scouting in ahead of time. They built a giant spy network is what they did. That's how I have termed it. And that's against the rules. And I looked at it, and I guess this is a long way of saying it really just bothered me, because I always have had a lot of respect for Michigan. And some of that has been diminished because of this. And that's where the term Michigan man has always come in. Yeah. And I guess first of all, NCAA rules, there's so many of them, and they're so unbelievably silly. When we look back at Jim Tressel losing his job at Ohio State for tattoos, basically, or Reggie Bush losing the Heisman, they're just, a lot of them are so inane and just asinine, especially now in this new era that we're going into. But I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost a lot of respect for Michigan, and I don't know what's going to come out of it. But it does bother me that Michigan people constantly deflect, and say it's not that big a deal, or they should just put helmet radios in, and everybody should bear the expense of all this stuff just because, Michigan built a giant spy network. You know?
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But it's also not, you see the quotes immediately, the anonymous quotes of, oh, this is the worst scandal in Big Ten history. It's like, well, this isn't even the worst scandal at the University of Michigan, or this is worse than the Astros and Deflategate combined times infinity. Like, it's just, there was just a lot of sensationalism in it. And I do think you put a lot of, Michigan got caught with its hands in the cookie jar. But you do look at this NCAA rule book, and I'm a lot more well-versed in it now than I expected to be coming out of this season. But it's something that always that struck me about Jim Harbaugh, and we had heard this about, going back to when he was at Stanford, when he was with the 49ers, is that guy will find a gray area or something that's not clearly explained, and he will push.
Yep. Kind of Belichick-like.
Yeah. And that's, and then there's a fine line because a lot of the greats will do that, but
Yeah.
you can't, you cross that line, and that's what the optics of it are. But really that rule in the NCAA rule book is so vaguely written that I don't know. Again, this isn't even a defense of Michigan. This is just, if you're arguing for either side of it, I don't know where you plant a flag on it. I mean, you could say it's a clear violation of the spirit of the rule, but the spirit of the rule and how the rule is to be interpreted are two very different things when it comes, to a defense to the whole situation. So it's super complicated. Again, like I said, I feel like in real time was living a 6-part, 10-part docuseries that we're going to find out a lot, especially if let's just say this does go to court and all of this goes to discovery or something like that. We're going to find out a lot, not just about what's in Michigan's closet, but a lot of other schools too. And it's just, I know that you just mentioned like, the deflecting and saying put radios in the helmets. They should just still put radios in the helmets.
They should.
We don't need to do espionage. This is essentially semi-professional football now. It is professional football now. So it's just been so exhausting because it's impossible. A lot of it too is impossible to quantify because there are just so many variables on the field in a football game. But it's clear that Connor Stallions is putting, dude, buy a Visa gift card. Or don't put your name on it. Like, what are you doing?
Anthony, speaking of closet, Minnie asks, Anthony, do you have to wear khakis if you're a Wolverine fan?
Oddly enough, the khakis got retired like 2018 or 2019. He started wearing like these not joggers, but they weren't khakis anymore. The Walmart khakis were, the economy in this area was up big time for a while after that. So that was a pretty easy costume to throw together. But no, we can officially retire from Walmart pants if you're trying to emulate a head coach.
Okay, M. Gaboski says, what pisses Michigan people off is rival fans pretending this isn't going on everywhere. If it wasn't, why are signals encoded so rigorously with backup quarterbacks? I think the problem is it's taken to an extreme. It's taken to, it's a giant spy network, for God's sakes. Everybody else is stealing signals, but they didn't build a giant spy network. That's the difference. That's what I see it as. What do you guys think?
Well, my thing too is, again, this isn't a point the finger thing. It's just we're having the conversation is
right.
Urban Meyer works the Fox pregame and is on the sideline for all these games, right? And what's the difference between what he sees and relay? Let's just say, oh, well, I noticed X about this, and relays it to Ryan Day, to some intern that went to go see Penn State play UMass in the cold, in the rain, with a shaky iPhone camera that you probably get a better view on the HD copy, to be frank with you. And he leaves at halftime because he's cold. Like, that's the other thing where it's, just based on what I know about Stallions and the allegations of this operation, he's not much of a mastermind of anything. And I don't know that he had a bunch of brilliant decoders working for him anyway. So again, and it's not deflecting. It's just like,
you're right. His own name.
It's the hubris of it all. It's the hubris and the recklessness of it all, to me.
Well, we have some pretty wise fans that join us every week. And David Matney says, sorry, I think an adequate sanction would have been to hire Scott Frost. So, maybe that would have been adequate to deal with this situation if Michigan had to strap themselves to the Scott Frost wagon.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Another from David Matney. Anthony, in your opinion, how much of Michigan's success was a result of sign stealing? Because that's really the kind of the crux of the matter, isn't it? That's right where it gets down to it.
Yeah. And that's where it goes back to the point I made about not knowing how to quantify it, because it's okay, one of the most prominent, again, I'm not accusing them of wrongdoing. They haven't been accused of any wrongdoing. Ohio State, they're one of the best sign stealing programs in college football. So when you go into a game against them, let's just say that you both have top-notch espionage, you've got each other's signs and you've changed your signs during the week. To me, that's game on. The second you figure out that they know what you're doing, you make the adjustment, it's done. But you play Michigan State, who, we've heard didn't change a single sign under Mel Tucker. And that's not me piling on for rivalry's sake. But, it really is tough to quantify. And you see these coaches say, oh, well, it's a 14 to 21 point advantage. And it's like, first off, most of these coaches, I don't trust their math at all, because every week we watch them botch how to manage clock situations and how many timeouts they have. But I mean, I can't say it didn't play any part in it. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan suspected them in 2018 and 2019 of having everything. Now, again, you were running, Don Brown's defense where he just sent everyone to the line of scrimmage and played man. So that's the sign there. But I don't. This is the thing to me, and why after these allegations came out, the only way for them out of it was to keep winning, because that whole operation was ripped out by its roots, right? As far as we know. I mean, I assume someone was still on the signs each week, but you're watching TV copy. No one's going to games because we know that everyone had records of that. But the only way out of it was to win. And, that you were able to go to, they went to Penn State and won really without throwing a forward pass. They threw the ball 8 times in the game.
That's true.
They beat Ohio State, which, again, you just strip all the BS away and just play a football game. One of the best football games of the year. Same deal with the Rose Bowl. Same deal with the national championship game. And, to me, I mean, it was, again, it's tough to say because I'm viewing it through the lens of watching this team every week. But I really feel like that stretch run, really from that Purdue game on, was kind of, to me, it was kind of affirming that, like, players win football games. And coaches, yeah, they're responsible for gathering intel and putting game plans together. But ultimately, the variables on a football field come down to players executing their assignment. And Michigan had an extremely veteran-laden team full of guys that had been there before. So it's tough to say. This year, I mean, yeah, well, it's no disrespect to the teams in the first half of the schedule, but signs are not. I mean, Michigan was just that much better than everyone they played. And that's the scores bear that out too. So it's tough. It really is tough to say.
I think that's true. As Michigan's team this year was as good as any college football team that I've seen, in quite a few years. I mean, they really were. And, I'm not a fan of what happened. And, when it comes down to it, I guess my axe to grind with Harbaugh is I think he lies. I think he is a flippin' liar. And when you mention something about finding the gray areas and exploiting them, Belichick did the same thing. I mean, there's people that do that. I mean, there's other coaches that have as well. I'm not just trying to make it a, outlier type of behavior, but the whole thing about, early on when he was suspended for the 3 games at the beginning of the year, that's because he lied. I mean, ultimately that's what it came down to. And him kind of washing his hands, but washing his hands of Connor Stallions and all that type of stuff. I mean, he lied. And so for me, that's what is so hard to get beyond, because quite honestly, I've cheered for Michigan ever since I was a kid. I really have. But, it
is the winged helmets, isn't it?
No, I just liked them. I mean, they had good players. And I don't know, maybe it was the damn fight song.
It was probably Bo Schembler. You know what it was? It was Bo Schembler and him and just angry Woody Hayes going back and forth.
It could, yeah. But I guess my axe to grind isn't against Michigan. It's Jim Harbaugh, and that's I think that's a little bit different. But I think the
NCAA agrees with you. I think the NCAA agrees with you, honestly.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of the funny thing is a lot of the things that hampered them in those first 5 or 6 years to me were self-inflicted errors off the field, or on the field, I should say. And
Right.
then, I think you can make the argument that Jim Harbaugh isn't at Michigan now and into the future because of self-inflicted mistakes made off the field. Um, Again, when you look back at those recruiting violations and the burger stuff, like ultimately it came down to exactly that. They bought a committed recruit a burger during COVID while he was in town. They watched some kids basically do push-ups on Zoom, which again, letter of the law, those are violations. And usually those are things you either self-report or it's just kind of a
Right.
slap on the wrist. But
Yeah, you take the
by saying you don't recall or you don't remember or just not cooperating, I mean, that created a much bigger issue than it needed to be. And that's I don't know that I'll ever understand why. And whether you think it's a big deal or not, like uh, this is the thing that gets me is that he's always taken offense to being called a liar or someone that wasn't true to
Yeah.
his word. But he's also someone that said after the Viking stuff happened that he'll be at Michigan as long as they want him. And Michigan, even up until the day that he left to ultimately go take the Chargers job, said they wanted him. They wanted to make him the highest paid coach in college football. And again, it's just, I don't like to point the finger and say liar, but I just judge people by their actions and not by their words. And ultimately, Michigan has a new head coach because its old head coach didn't want to be there anymore. And I have no issue with that either. But
Now, do you think he left because he wanted to get away from sanctions, or was he always going back to the NFL?
I think that he always, now when he originally signed at Michigan, he had promised the athletic director at the time, Jim Hackett, 7 years. I'll give you 7 years, and then I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to chase a Super Bowl. And to him, football, he's one of those football lifers. It's a religion to him. And when you've had not only a taste of it, but to lose a Super Bowl to your brother, and that's hanging over your head, and that, because make no mistake about it, he's going to go to the Chargers and he's going to win. And I think he was interested in the job because he has a chance to do that. You've got the bird in hand with Justin Herbert, and you probably got a little window to attack here. But I don't think that he was, even before a lot of this stuff this year with the recruiting investigation, the sign stealing stuff, a lot of people had kind of thought that even before that, this kind of had a last dance vibe to it.
Really?
And that he would ultimately, because again, 2 years ago, he got on a plane to Minnesota with the intent to take the job and then botched the final interview. Last year, the Broncos had interest. He heard him out a little bit, but it never got that far. And then this year, it was, just every time that we would get some kind of update that they felt good about the contract, Michigan had agreed to another stipulation, it would be, oh, well, now he wants this. And it just kind of felt like from probably like mid-October on, even before the sign stuff was out there, it just felt like it was always going to get stretched into this NFL cycle. And we talk about the timing of it, when we talk about why is it Sherrone Moore, again, they would have taken Jim Harbaugh back in a heartbeat. But at the same time, you can't light the first 2 to 3 weeks of your offseason on fire every year. It's just not the way that things move now. You just can't do it. So like, it's going to be different, but from a stability perspective, again, you got to win on the field, but this is, I think it was just the right time for everyone is how I would summarize it.
David Matney says, Anthony, I give you credit for coming on the show. And Anthony, you've given straight up answers, and we certainly appreciate that. I'm going to pop another one up. Thomas Fedoni. I'm not sure if this is the Thomas Fedoni.
It's not the football player. It might
not
be his
the
dad.
Football player. Let's be
it
honest.
Might be his dad.
Pardon?
It might be his dad.
Okay, let's be honest. Correctly. He wasn't a great coach. He possibly had 2 good seasons after COVID. If people remember, he was about to get fired before COVID. So why would he not go out on top? I don't, honestly, my memory is so doggone short, but there is something to be said about going out on top. Yeah. I mean, you know, there are a lot of coaches that, you know, hang around too damn long, and legends are tarnished, you know, in some respects. So again, I'm not defending Coach Harbaugh by any means, but I think that that's certainly a good point. John, where else we headed with this, bud?
Well, I suppose Michigan is still this a Michigan show. Where you have English is hard. We have 4 new teams coming into the pack for the Pac-12. They're coming into the Big Ten. Michigan and Ohio State have ruled this damn conference for its existence. Let's just say, not always, but pretty damn close. Do you think that that's going to continue? Or do you think that, there's going to be more fluidity to the situation going forward?
I mean, I think they have a good shot to stay in that conversation. But when you look at these 4 teams coming in, Oregon to me is the one that I think has a chance to make the biggest impact right off the bat. And look at even if you just look at the transfer portal this cycle, I feel like every guy is going to either Oregon, Texas, or Ole Miss, and they already recruit extremely well. I just feel like that team, Ohio State has been loading up to make sure they don't lose to Michigan again, but they've kind of got their own little boogeyman coming in from the West as well. And again, I think if I had to power rank it today, I think it's probably Oregon and Ohio State at the top. And then I'm not sure from there. I mean, a lot of questions with Michigan still. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but I think Michigan still has a window here to be near the top, but there is going to be a drop off with them. And I think that is going to create opportunities for, the USCs, the Wisconsins. I really do. Let me say something nice about Nebraska. I think Nebraska really isn't headed in the right direction. I like Matt Rule a lot. And that team played hard all year. And I just, as a fan of football, fan of the Big Ten, I like to see that. So I think that, right now you've got that Big 2 or Big 3. I'm not sold on USC coming in and tearing up the Big Ten.
Did you see Lincoln Riley? This is the real quote that I saw today.
What's that?
Did Lincoln Riley really say that about Jim Harbaugh? If I saw me coming into the conference, I'd leave too. Is that a real quote?
I don't think so.
I mean, he is an arrogant. Lincoln Riley drives me nuts.
Well,
I can't believe he would say that.
In reference to Oregon, I have tremendous respect for that coach, and that program's been really solid. But once upon a time, there was a school who dominated their conference that came into the Big Ten, and there were a lot of expectations that school on the football field was going to kick ass and take names. And we know where that school has been since they came into the Big Ten conference. So, I think history might have something to say a little bit about Oregon's ability to step into the Big Ten conference and kick ass and take names. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see where this goes, because I like that divisions are gone now. Let's just have those best 2. If we're going to play a Big Ten championship game, let those 2 best teams play. You look at there's so much change happening, at the school I cover right now with Michigan, and they're going into next year where they got Texas in week 2. They have to go play at Washington next year. They get USC and Oregon at home. And that's before you even play, they'll play a Michigan State team. That's always going to be a tough game, especially with a new head coach. And then they go to Columbus the last week. I mean, that's a gauntlet. That's one of the tougher college football schedules I've ever seen. But it's going to be a lot of fun too. I'm just, I know there's a lot of changes in the sport right now. I'm a fan of more games with stakes, more games that matter, and more teams in the dance. I mean, 4 it's always just been, to me, the BCS +2, and now it's still going to be kind of an invitational, but let's get more teams in there. Let's play games on campus sites, and let's crown a champion. I mean, it's going to be so much more of a worthy champion when you have to win 4 straight games or whatever it is, or 3 straight games. And I'm looking
So
forward to it.
you don't think college football has been destroyed?
Well, I mean, it's been altered fundamentally. That's
Right.
for sure. But destroyed, no. I mean, people can cry and scream, and I'm one of those guys too. I love tradition. I love the rivalries. But man, I mean, I just think that getting more good football and less Western Kentucky in week 2 or
Yeah,
things like that.
that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was on a show before this, and that's what I talked about. You know, I do the opening odds article every week, and you look for big games. And some weeks there's maybe one big game, and that's going to change now. All right. M. Gaboski says Nebraska hasn't kicked ass since Bo Pelini. They won 10 games every year.
We know. We know.
Thanks for the reminder, dude. Fred Sacco, a little while ago, we have to include a comment from Fred because, well, he's Fred. Fred Sacco said about football terminology, Northwestern sent all their guys to the shower and played man a lot. Ooh. And, that I think that's going to be one of the fun things about this is, well, not that Northwestern has that going on, but Oregon's going to have to play Iowa at Kinnick Stadium.
I know all this talk of, we can't wait for Michigan, USC, or Nebraska playing Washington. It's like, well, wait, what about UCLA having to go play Rutgers? That's going to be amazing.
And Northwestern's going to drag every one of these teams into a rock fight they don't want to be in. So I think it's just going to be a lot more fun than it's been. I get the traditions of being ripped apart, but I guess for us as Nebraska fans, our traditions already were ripped apart. So, and we found new ones, and that
you guys were trailblazers.
Yeah, in many, many ways.
Yeah,
in many, many ways.
Early adopters.
Yeah.
All right. We have to turn the. If I have a Michigan guy on, we have to turn the fire hose on Ohio State.
Here we go.
Right now, because I'm going to have a friend of mine on from Ohio State and sometime in the future, and we're going to do the same thing to him. And they have this attitude that you can go ahead and fire Ryan Day, and they're going to be good no matter what because they're Ohio State. Respond to that, Mr. Anthony Broome.
They're going to be good no matter what because they're Ohio State.
Yeah.
I really do think I always said that all it was going to take for me, and granted, Ohio State dominated the Michigan rivalry for 20 years.
Yeah.
But all I said was that all it was going to take is one loss for them to just fall into this spiral where they're in this identity crisis. And these last few years, I mean, I think that what's always made Ohio State so scary is that they were a Ferrari or a buzzsaw in a conference full of snowplows, and no matter what happened, they were gonna they had those guys in the trenches too. Like I always remember those Urban Meyer teams. Their offensive line would go 6'6", 6'7" across the entire line, 340, 350, and they're just not. The reason that Michigan has beaten them the last 3 years is because they were better where it's counted. And a lot of teams have kind of got Ohio State into rock fights over the last few years, especially this year. So again, you can't microwave culture. You can't microwave good play in the trenches. And yeah, you can go throw bags of money at guys to come in and $1 million here, $2 million there. But the pressure is squarely on them this year, and that's kind of a fun place to view them from because they haven't played very well under pressure the last few years.
No, they have this thing where they go into games and suddenly something cracks and they start committing dumb penalties all over the freaking place. I think if you look at the games they've lost, that's one consistent thing that they've done poorly is keep their brains on, and they just start like personal foul penalties just start showing up out of the blue, and you're like, well, you can watch them but just fall apart.
Here's the biggest thing with them especially like this year, they put a target on their back. Ryan Day put a target on their back after the Notre Dame game when he cut his little promo about how tough they were. And something that I think he and that program at large fails to realize is that toughness is not just a punch card that you hand in and it guarantees you victory. Like toughness is a prerequisite, and then you go play a football game from there. And to their credit, I mean, that Michigan Ohio State game this year was a heavyweight fight, and Michigan just made more plays. But
right,
it's not enough to just be tough. You know, you have to be poised, and you have to. You can be tough, but there's also like a targeted kind of physicality. And when they've lost games, they kind of lose themselves in that. And that, you know, we'll see. There's a lot of pressure on them this year. And quite frankly, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to watch it too. I just think that the whole, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, the whole Michigan Ohio State thing going back and forth, it was just so. It made me feel, you know what, if I have a dysfunctional family and I suddenly get to go to somebody else's house and, they're drunk and fighting. I'm like, yeah, my family isn't the only fucked up one in the world. This is great. Where most people would go, wow, this is embarrassing. It's wonderful. Okay. Blake Corum won this championship. Did he not?
Oh my God. He's automatic. I mean, to have a guy scored 27 touchdowns in a year when guys aren't wearing leather helmets anymore, it is insane. Like that broke a Michigan record that was set in like 1901, him having 27 touchdowns this year. He's the heartbeat. And some of his best runs came in those last two games of the season. Right. We had a knee injury, but he was the engine. And it's always cool to see because now everyone's looking to get to the league after 3 years, or guys will have a couple big years and they'll then go somewhere else and chase a bag. Like Blake Corum came back, cited unfinished business, and then finished the business damn near on his own. And I respect the hell out of that guy. So yeah, he was awesome.
Okay. Aaron Keene says, is that John's winter robe? No, well, this is the robe I wear. It's become a kind of an iconic thing, the Hugh Hefner kind of looking robe here. I want to start my own clothing line with robes. Anyway, let's move on. Todd, do you have anything for Anthony?
No, I appreciate Anthony's perspective on this. Like I said, the thing that bothers me the most about Michigan is Jim Harbaugh. And, time's going to tell, how things end up. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think a lot of Michigan fans' least favorite thing about Michigan is the antics of Jim Harbaugh. So, you're more unified with a lot of Michigan fans than you aren't in that regard.
Well, the guy was, let's be honest. I mean, the guy was really, he was fun. The whole, what was it? Chicken is a nervous bird. What was that comment about?
Yeah. It's funny. He said that he didn't eat chicken because they're known as nervous birds. And then one of the last press conferences he did, he talked about how he actually has chickens at his house now. One of the players went over there for Thanksgiving and he's out back feeding the chickens.
What are we going to do to replace that in college football?
You know what? That's the biggest thing of all is that, one of college football's best personalities, and it's not going to be the same in the NFL because, that league is just, it's sterilized and
it is.
This college football lends itself to the unique, and Michigan's head coach these last 9 years was as one of one as any coach could possibly be. So we'll see what happens with the product on the field, but from a personality storyline perspective, I used to have a boss that would say, if you can't be good, be interesting. And Michigan was pretty good most of the time. Obviously really good the last few years. but he checked both of those boxes because there was never a dull moment. Yeah, it was. It's going to be a lot different now. But
one more, and we'll let you go. We'll spend the last 9 minutes talking about Nebraska stuff, or 8 minutes, or whatever it is. What is the feeling? I mean, what is the feeling about around the Michigan fan base about having won their first national title since 1948? I mean, how do they feel like they're going to spend shit tons of money on buying paraphernalia and memorabilia everywhere? And
yeah,
are you selling things? Like, I wore this t-shirt to.
I haven't, I have a lot of confetti. I'm still pulling confetti out of my pockets.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Get a couple friends here and there. Hey, you got any confetti left? And you send some in the mail. But yeah, I mean, it is, it has been, I think for Michigan fans, they have, again, for guys like me that put their head down and work in it every day, you kind of it's just what's the story today? What's happening today? For Michigan fans, I think they were, from a pure entertainment perspective, I think that they were put through the ringer this year. Jim Harbaugh was coaching, and then he wasn't the first 3 games. But then everyone's telling you how bad your schedule was for 8 weeks. And then, well, once the schedule lightens up, then gets tougher, then the sign stealing stuff comes out. And then you don't have him for the 3 biggest games of the season. And then you beat freaking Alabama in the Rose Bowl in overtime. And then, 3 weeks ago tonight is where I got all that confetti I'm still giving away to people.
Right.
And it's amazing how things have changed in just a couple weeks. And, but yeah, like I said, this is going to be, a 6, 7, 8 part docuseries at one point. And if anyone out there, if I'm planting an idea, I'm available just to contribute to it. So I just want to put that out there right now. But, I think it's extremely gratifying for fans because, you go to, and again, obviously the Michigan State rivalry here is as poisonous and as toxic at times as that Ohio State rivalry. When you walk into the office every day, or you go to work, go to school, and you got your rival telling you how much of a dirty, no good cheater your head coach is, and how your program is dirty, and how you're overrated, and how all these things, to be able to kind of walk out of this season undefeated with the wins they had when they had them. I think for Michigan fans, it really has been a dream come true because 1997 for both of our programs was a long time ago. And that's, to do it. And this kind of brings it full circle too, with what we were talking about in terms of college football going away from the things we loved about it. To do that in this season, in the last year of the 4-team playoff, the last year where the Big Ten is what it is, the last year where really, we could be looking at seasons where Michigan and Ohio State play twice. Maybe they play 3 times. There's never going to be another edition of that game that had those stakes on the line, even taking out the PSYOP stuff and all the silly stuff behind the scenes. So,
right.
I noticed that you didn't say the end of the Big Ten West. I weep every other night thinking of that.
You know what? Maybe it's Stockholm syndrome at this point. I love the Big Ten West, and I love betting Iowa unders, and I'll still be able to do that. But my gosh.
All right. Aaron Keene says, I like this Anthony guy. Classy dude. Let's see. David Manny says, Anthony, enjoyed having you on the program. Where's Minnie's comment? Minnie says, what happened there?
I have no idea.
Anthony, you can come back anytime and talk trash about Ohio State. There you go. I think we're gonna go past our hour, Todd. We're gonna spend a little bit of time on Nebraska stuff. But thank you for joining us. One of the things you need to do before you leave is plug yourself.
Sure.
What do you actually do? Things like that I didn't cover.
My name is Anthony Broome. I cover the Michigan Wolverines. I am over at On3 covering Michigan for our Michigan site called The Wolverine, aptly named. And if you somehow are a Michigan fan that made your way to this, come on over. We'd love to have you. Obviously, message board. We'd love to add you to the insanity over there. We also have a print edition of what we do. We do a monthly magazine, and we just started production on our commemorative national championship edition. So you can head on over to thewolverineondemand.com and pre-order that. And looks like that'll be out sometime in mid-February or so. So, 5 years from now, when Connor Stallions is coaching Michigan and they're fighting for bowl eligibility, you can grab your little commemorative issue and remember the good times. So
there you go.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Take care of yourself.
Yes, thank you guys.
All right. Bye. Okay. He mentioned the confetti. I'll tell you what, I shot that Stanford, Nebraska volleyball national title game. When we lost to Stanford, I was out on the court, and that stuff did literally so much of that shit coming down that if you breathe wrong, you're going to die from inhaling it. So that's my name dropping the national title thing. Anyway, let's see. What about Nebraska? Linda had some questions. Where the hell are they?
Well, Linda, one of the things Linda asked was about the $205 million.
There it is.
The sports department taking in $205 million last year. Is that gross or net?
That's net.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
No, wait, that's gross. That's how much they brought in, not how much they ended up with. I mean, they topped 200 million for the first time in their history, which, is understandable given inflation and given how I can't remember. Oh, you know what? When I was at the Polar Plunge, for some reason, I got into this discussion with somebody about college sports, and they were asking me about bowl games and things like that. And what I pointed out to them is that, listen, college sports in general has so much more value now than it probably ever has in terms of relative to stuff that's on TV. And I think I've said this before, but when is the last time you actually turned on TV to watch anything? I mean, some people watch The Masked Singer, some people watch America's Got Talent, The Bachelor, that kind of stuff. I don't watch any of that stuff. And I'm not going to, that's never going to happen. When I turn on TV, if it's not a Netflix anime, weird anime or something, or I started watching some stuff on Apple, but sports is the thing that is not scripted. It's typically not boring. And even casual people now are going to turn to sports more than ever because it's not boring. I mean, most of the time there's still a story there. I mean, everybody's tired of it, but Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and everything going on with that stuff in the Super Bowl. But, there's more stuff going on with that than there is probably across, I don't know, all of the reality TV shows put together out there. So that value is going to continue to increase. And because of that, athletic departments are going to make more money. And certainly Nebraska's is one of the best well-run athletic departments in the nation. And they're going to
start paying their athletes, and they need to.
Yeah.
So David Matney says, does anyone look at Brock Purdy and wonder where would Chubba be if he had adequate coaching? David, I don't think Chubba is Brock. And I think the biggest difference between the two of them is their mindset. And, Brock Purdy is one of the coolest customers you're ever going to run across. Not to say that I think both of them are decent students of the game, but, it's more than anything, Brock Purdy's success is largely attributed to his demeanor, the way he responds under pressure. There's something different about that dude. And, congrats to him. I've been a Brock Purdy fan since he was a freshman in college. Yeah. Maybe some people remember back in the day when everybody was building up Adrian Martinez as the super freshman. I posted a few times, don't forget this freshman across the river at Iowa State that's pretty damn good too. So, I don't know that Chubba, granted, Chubba didn't get high quality coaching,
right?
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he would have been there.
Branson Chab gives us a super chat. Thank you. You can all do that, and buy me a new pair of shoes. He says I ordered a copy of Been Dead, Never Been to Europe, my memoir, and found it extremely helpful. Recommended it to family members, and they also loved it. Thank you, Branson. I appreciate that very much. Let's see what else. What else have we got here?
You never, John, when you promote your book, you never do mention it. I'm in it.
I never do. That's true.
Yeah, you never do.
Linda Wilkins says, so with Allie going to USC, we will now be playing against 3 of the 4 transfers in conference in volleyball. My wife brought up the fact that she thought Allie Batenhorst might have transferred to USC so she could go to a bigger academic institution I think she's in grad school now, isn't she?
She is in grad school.
Yeah.
I got a different theory.
Okay.
Hollywood.
Really?
Hollywood.
Why?
I think she's always kind of had I mean, I'm not going down there because everybody will criticize me.
She is a very, very lovely looking young woman. She is a very absolutely gorgeous young woman. That you can say that, and there's nothing wrong with it. Unless
not
Todd
talking about her caboose. Unless
Todd goes on about it for.
I think it's kind of interesting though, because she was kind of late into the portal compared to other players. USC has not had that strong of a volleyball program in recent years.
Right.
Also, there were people that were surprised she ended up at Creighton because a boyfriend is there. I don't know if Creighton had room for her on the roster. Who knows? Who knows what goes on behind the scenes? But I did find it interesting that it was USC and maybe not a program that has played a little bit better in recent years. I mean, the other transfers all went to places that have been very, very strong programs recently.
Linda Wilkins also says, thoughts on Cook trading Bud. I don't know what that means.
I think Bud's the horse.
Did he trade his horse?
I apparently, unless there's another Bud, but maybe Bud just doesn't have it anymore.
I hear that about me all the time.
Well, John Cook's kind of into this whole roping thing, and there's sometimes roping horses wear out. You got to get a new one. I don't know. Sorry, Linda. I wish I could talk more intelligently about Bud.
Aaron Keene says, I thought Bud was weed, but I live in Colorado. That is a term.
There is.
Fred Sacco, serious anecdotal comment. Fred ran into Joba Chamberlain yesterday. Joba said his son's coming to NU, and he's a better player than he was. That's your baseball entry, Todd.
If Job is anything like his father,
don't say it.
There's a significant amount of exaggeration and overstatement. I don't know. Maybe his kid's a good ball player. Maybe he is. I hope so. God knows that Nebraska needs a kid that can trot out there on Friday night and throw 8 innings and shut other teams down. So I hope so.
That'd be cool. Okay. Do we have anything else? Wrestling?
Well, I'll tell you what, folks. If
the Nut Masher scored 800 points in a wrestling match, what the hell was that about?
I'll tell you what. One of the absolute best heavyweight wrestling matches I've ever seen in my life. Nash Hutmacher wrestled the other night against Wisconsin. And between him and the kid from Wisconsin, they scored 33 points, and none of them were back points. I couldn't believe it. And I continue just to be, every time I see that kid wrestle, he gets better. He's the good ones are going to clean his clock. I mean, there's just too big of a hill to climb for him in the short amount of time he has. But holy smokes, he's athletic. I appreciate what an incredible athlete that kid is. You can see it out on the wrestling mat, and it just is amazing. And what an exciting wrestling match it really was. If you somehow can run it down, watch that match from start to finish. That's what wrestling should be like every time two guys are out on the mat.
Okay, Fred Sacco says, Jesus, Todd Bucket of Ice Water Wolverton, which is a nickname I'm certainly going to remember. And then Minnie reminds us, the Five Heart Show is moving to Wednesday so we can all watch the basketball game on Thursday night. So on Wednesday night, we're having the Five Heart podcast. Remember to like the videos and, subscribe, become a member, that kind of stuff. That also helps us out. I don't know if we have anything else. Do we have anything else? Is there anything I'm forgetting?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. I'm glad we had Anthony on tonight. That was interesting. And thank you everyone for hanging around and joining us. We always appreciate you, and some banter and lively banter. So yeah, John, I'm looking forward to baseball season. We didn't even get to talk about that other than Jabba's kit, but it's just around the corner,
man.
Just around the corner.
It is. All right. Good night, Todd.
Good night, John.